welcome to our session this afternoon on TeaMLit, all about teacher training in media literacy. My name is Sally Reynolds and I'm delighted to welcome you to our session this afternoon, which, as you can see, is entitled Premier Insights, the Media and Information Literacy Landscape. So just to take you through the agenda, give you an idea of what we have planned for the session this afternoon. I'm just going to very briefly introduce the project to you, TeaMLit to you, which is at the back of this session we have this afternoon, which is the first of 3 webinars that we're running on teacher training and education in media literacy. Then our colleagues Ricardo, Lucia and Lina will explain the work of the first of our work packages, work areas on research into teacher training here in Europe. We're then going to go into some breakout sessions because we'd like to get some feedback and input from all of you who are joining us today. Report back then from the breakout sessions, which we'll explain to you a little bit later. And then Lise de Boeck from the Thomas More College here in Belgium is going to share her experience on pre-service teacher training that is being run in their college. So just a couple of quick house rules before we get started, if that's okay. Please keep your camera on. It's lovely to see people's faces, and but your microphone's off if you don't mind. We will use the chat for picking up questions to our speakers and also for facilitating discussion a little bit later on. If you could, you can still change your name on Zoom to indicate your name, but also the organization and the country that you're coming from, which would be very helpful to us here this afternoon to know where everybody's joining us. And we also want to let you know that we are recording this session. So we will be making a copy of the recording of the session available afterwards. We're going to try and make sure we keep it to a maximum 75 minutes. If it goes a little bit over, okay, please forgive us, but we'll try and stick to the 75 minutes. We've got quite a lot to get through this afternoon. So Chloe, if you don't mind, I'd like to share my quick introduction slide just to explain to you what TeaMLit actually is. It is a European project all about teacher education and digital media literacy, providing guidance, resources and support for teacher trainers in Europe. It's an 18-month-long European project. Is funded under EMIF, the European Media Information Fund. So we're about halfway through the project at the moment. If you don't mind, switch off your mics. Here, somebody's got a mic on. Yeah, thank you very much. And the project has got 3 main pieces of work that it's doing. So really what we're trying to tackle is the fact that while teachers are clearly people who need to be helped with regard to media literacy in the classroom, very often they don't have access to appropriate training. So we're really targeting in on teacher training for teachers in the area of media literacy. So Work Package 1, which is the one you're going to hear about today, is all about research, review and analysis. It's all about seeing what actually is happening in Europe with regard to teacher training in both in-service and pre-service. Our second work package, which we'll be coming back to in our next of these sessions taking place in November, is all about the network that we're developing. So we're very keen to develop a community of practice amongst people who are engaged in teacher training in this area, and also to identify success scenarios that can be repeated from one part of Europe to another. And the other area of activity that we're covering is Work Package 4, Resources and Repository, which we will cover in the 3rd of our TeaMLit webinars taking place in December. We'll give you the times and places that you can register for all of these at the end of the session today. And in Work Package 4, we're going to create a core set of 5 modules which can be used in teacher training, and also we're building a repository of materials that would be useful. You can see the list of partners on the screen. So Media Learning Association is the lead partner for this project, but we're delighted to be joined by partners in Croatia, Germany, Belgium, Ireland and Finland, as well as a host of supporting partners. So without too much further ado, let me then go to our main presentation, introductory presentation for the session today, which is all about the research that's being carried out into teacher training in media literacy. And for that, I'm very happy to hand over to Ricardo.
Thank you very much, Sally. Lucia is going to share our presentation. Great. So can everyone see the presentation well?
Yep,
Yeah,
looks
great.
good. Thanks.
Good. So as Sally explained, so we are part of the work package 2. We are carrying out research across Europe on teacher training on media literacy. This presentation is about our first report, which was launched last September and is available on the Media and Learning Association website. So please go there and download and read it through. And if you have any comments and feedback, we would really appreciate that. Lucia? Great, so this is our team. So our team is composed by 2 institutions, the Dublin City University here in Ireland and also the Heidelberg University in Germany. So it's me and Lucia here in Ireland and Lina in Germany. Lucia? Okay, so the first thing is that we had to came up with, you know, a media literacy, media and information literacy concept or definition for our project. And as probably you know, it's really hard sometimes to get a definition because it's such a broad field and such a broad concept. And not all the time people are on the same page when they are talking about media information literacy. So we discussed among our teams what would be the best definition, and we tried to get a concept that was as broad as possible, so we could encompass as many activities and best practices as possible in the target countries. So you can see we included many topics such as disinformation, critical thinking, multimodality, new literacies, online safety, data literacy, conspiracy theories. So we tried to include as many topics within the media and information literacy as possible. So that would be, I think the reach of our research would be much bigger and much better. Yeah, Lucia? So the main objective of this research project is to carry out like a mapping of what's going on around Europe in terms of teacher training on media literacy. So what kind of training, if any, are teachers, both primary and secondary teachers, receiving in Europe, both pre-service, so the training that they receive before they become teachers, and also in service when they become teachers, what kind of training they are receiving in the school. So we did this mapping in 5 countries. We did in Ireland, we did in Portugal, we did in Belgium-Flanders, and then the German-speaking community in Belgium, and also in the Baden-Württemberg part of Germany. So that was the first report. And Lucia now is going to talk about the methodology.
Yeah, so the methodology was a qualitative one based in 3 steps. The first step, it was a more academic approach and literature review on media information literacy, education and training to teachers on Scopus, that is a repository of academic papers. And we also did a very thorough investigation that is called also desk research on policies, laws, institutional websites like university and colleges. We walked through syllabus, models, everything that was related somehow to media information literacy, education and training to teachers. Also NGOs that are promoting training to teachers. And finally, we finished with an interview with stakeholders in each country. So I also gonna go over to some of the results already on the Worldview, because we also, besides, so besides the country, each country that Ricardo already told us, said to us, that was the main focus of our first report. We also tried to bring a little bit of what was going on worldwide. And we found out that the new information, education, and training into the curriculum and guidance and educational systems around the world is also not very common. We do have some teacher-specific programs in media information literacy, but they are very scarce, especially to pre-service teachers or future teachers. And there is some materials and very interesting materials for in-service teachers, but unfortunately, they are more focused on resources rather than training specifically. There's some great and notable initiatives around the world. I put it here, some that you can look through further in the report. But again, there is a lack of awareness about those projects and information in general about these projects. So there is a growing interest in media and information literacy around the world, but still there's a lot of lack in terms of training. So again, about the specific countries, sorry, I passed one more. So there's some countries that they have some mandatory meal teaching in the schools. That's the case of the US, for instance, but it's unequally implemented in different states in the United States. We have also Philippines, that's also mandatory, South Korea, but again, the training for the teachers that are supposed to teach that is lacking. So that's a huge concern of us and of them as well. In Brazil, we have recently evolution in the subject. There is a public consultation in a law of media literacy education in schools. So there will be developments shortly. So just to bring us a little bit of context in terms of global, I'm going to hand over to Ricardo again to talk about Ireland.
Okay, so now we're going to dive a little bit into the 5 countries or the countries and regions that I mentioned. So we're going to start with Ireland. I'm just going to give you, and again, this is just a summary of our findings. You can find more information on the report. So just giving a brief context around what's going on in Ireland. So since 2016, we have a media literacy policy, which was a great achievement because since then we had absolutely nothing in terms of policies in the country related to media literacy. And also because of this policy, the follow-up of this policy was the creation of a network called Media Literacy Ireland, which is still in place and is one of the main achievements that we had in the country. The network has nowadays over 250 people and institutions and organizations. This includes people from academia, the media sector, and the civil society, and they are working together mainly on a voluntary basis to promote media literacy in the country. We recently had a change in terms of policy. We have a new commission that's looking after media in the country. It's called Commission Amman. It replaced the Broadcast Authority of Ireland in 2023. We still don't know exactly how this will affect media literacy in the country. They had just launched a working program where they mentioned media literacy very briefly, saying that they are going to have some media literacy events in the future, but we still don't know how this is going to play out in the coming months. So this is something that we still need to do. I mean, they are still responsible for the Media Literacy Ireland, which is great, but we are, of course, we are hoping that we have more initiatives in the future. In terms of education in Ireland, I mean, just like most of the other countries in Europe, Ireland doesn't have media literacy as a separate subject in the curriculum. However, you can find some elements of media literacy spread across the curriculum, both in primary and secondary education. So you have, for example, we have a topic here called social, personal, and health education across the education years. So it starts with primary and goes up to the secondary education. So you have some elements of media literacy there. There's actually a component called media education. We have also the digital media literacy short course, which is not compulsory, but this is available for schools that want to implement some kind of media literacy in secondary education in what the part that we call junior cycle, which covers from 12 to 15 years of age. However, we still have very little information about how teachers actually use the resources available, how they actually teach this topic in the schools. This is something that we still need to learn more. There's very scarce information about that. So we still don't know exactly how this happens in the schools, and especially how actually teachers deliver these kind of topics in schools. Lucia? Now, more specifically on teacher training, there have been some improvements in both pre-service and in-service training on media literacy in the country, but it's still very, very limited. So, for example, in pre-service, we have here in Ireland 13 universities that provide education for teachers. But if you look at their curriculum, and we did an analysis of the curriculum in each of these institutions to try to find elements of media literacy. So you can find, again, you can find some elements in some of the courses, especially courses related to technology, such as, for example, digital learning or ICT in education. So you can find some elements of media literacy in there, but it's just like very, very little. There's no subject called media and information literacy or media literacy or even information literacy in the curriculum. And even another finding that we have is that even the teachers who are teaching these modules, they don't feel confident to say that they are experts in media literacy. So even when we were trying to get more information from them, or when we were trying to arrange interviews with them, it was very common for them to say, "Oh, but I'm not an expert in media literacy. I'm just teaching some, some topics that are related to media literacy, but I'm not an expert on that." And this is because usually they come from a background of education or communication studies, or sometimes digital technology. So they don't feel confident or comfortable enough to say that they are experts in media literacy. This, of course, shows that we are still at the very beginning of a long process of first having the training for the people who are training the teachers, and then so that teachers can actually deliver something, some kind of content in schools. In relation to in-service training, we have a few more opportunities, but it's quite limited. There are opportunities from the government, such as the PDST, which stands for the Professional Development Service for Teachers here in Ireland. So there are some institutions within this department, like Webwise or Artists in Junior Cycle, that provide some training on media literacy, or at least some topics of media literacy, especially like summer courses, online summer courses, where they discuss topics such as digital learning or digital citizenship, or online safety. So there are some things about that specifically for teachers. So even though you can find in schools some organizations here that will provide media literacy training for students, but for teachers, it's still very, very limited. And the problem is not resources, which is, I think this is not a problem in Ireland, it's worldwide, as Lucia was saying, that we don't have actually shortage of resources on media literacy, especially in English. So if you are in an English-speaking country, you have plenty of resources on media literacy. The problem is actually training. So when we talk to teachers, one of the main complaints were, okay, the resources are very interesting, but I don't know how to use them because I don't have the knowledge and the skills that I need to deliver this content. So I don't feel comfortable, or I don't feel confident enough to actually deliver this content. Lucia? Yeah, just finally, so in terms of challenges and opportunities, I think that we lack a kind of a national strategy around that. There's a lot of fragmentation in the education system. So basically, there are some departments looking after resources, and then others looking after training, and then others looking after the teachers themselves. So basically, what we need to combine all of them in one, big strategy, so that we can see all the gaps that we have. So, for example, we can see that even though we have resources, but we don't have training, so we need to provide this training. How we can do this in pre-service education, so then we need to talk to universities and see how they can incorporate this. And of course, we know it's very difficult because the curriculum is already very, very busy, it's very crowded, so it's not easy to include a new topic. And then in service, again, we have issues such as, for example, the fact that teachers already have a huge workload. They don't have time, for new things and for new training. There's problems with funding, so that there are many things that we discuss in in the report about that in terms of challenges and opportunities. So that's for Ireland. Lucia is going to talk about Portugal now.
Yeah, so in terms of Portugal, we also found a very interesting context. Even though media and information literacy has been taught in schools for a long time, but mostly focused on media production, like with newspapers in schools, and the involvement of journalists also in many of the initiatives on media information literacy in schools has been historically important in Portugal. But just more recently, they have a development in this in more strategized ways of approaching the subject in schools and also in the broader community and the broader population. So one of the most important aspects is that the regulatory authority for media in Portugal assumed this problem, and it's giving interesting projects, it's leading projects and groups to discuss the formation or the development of media information literacy in the country. Even they have conferences every year where they put the people together to discuss the development of media information literacy in Portugal. But in terms of curriculum, for nowadays, the curriculum that the part of the curriculum that it's part, the media information is part of, is the citizenship and development subject. That is a mandatory curriculum offered in schools. So that's pretty much the part of the curriculum that. Sorry, there's some. Okay, and then still about Portugal. In terms of teacher training, they are very scarce, especially for pre-service teaching teachers. And interestingly enough, most of the things that we found and most of the education that we found are actually based on the departments of communication rather than the Department of Education. That's also due to the historical involvement of journalists in developing these discussions in the public. So again, and it's a fragmented new initiatives, but there is also very great opportunities, especially because in-service teaching, in-service teachers education and training is also mandatory in Portugal. So there's great opportunities to introduce media information literacy training to in-service teachers through this program of continuing development education to in-service teachers. And also we put some good practices there, but you can go through in the report again. So I'm gonna stop sharing now, and I'm gonna ask our colleague Lina to start her presentation.
Hello, everyone. I'm greeting you from the Heidelberg School of Education in Germany, and I'm very happy to take over from my colleagues Ricardo and Lucia. And I will go through in the remaining of our presentations through 3 countries. And I will start with the most populous one in Europe, and that is Germany. It has over 83 million inhabitants, and of whom approximately 8.6 million pupils are currently studying in schools. They have less than 800,000 teachers as of last academic year, and about 7% of currently studying students are planning to become teachers. Currently, Germany is facing a crisis of teacher shortage. Teacher training in Germany is complex. It is differentiated between school types, levels, subjects, and federal lands. So teacher training until recently has been called institutionally homeless because until about 9 years ago, it did not have specific institutional structures within universities that could provide a contact point for teacher students. This organizational fragmentation has been countered with a number of schools and education as well as centers for teacher education being created in a number of universities across Germany. After university studies, pre-service practical part follows for future teachers, which is organized not by university but separate institution. And all in all, in Germany, there are 122 universities where future teachers can acquire their education. Continuing professional development, on the other hand, depends of the federal lands and their requirements put on teachers, which in laws they call it as a must or a can happen during teacher non-teaching time. In practice, we saw that often it is indeed a personal investment of teachers' time for continuous professional development. Education in Germany falls under the administrative and political responsibility of each individual federal state, of which there are 16 in total, and results in structural and content-related differences in teacher education between those Länder. Standards and requirements are provided by the Conference of Ministers, and in this project I have researched mainly the third biggest land called Baden-Württemberg, which has 26 universities and universities of education. In 2016, the Conference of Education Ministers has defined media education as one of 6 guiding perspectives to be applied on all schools at all levels and throughout the curricular and in an integrated manner across all subjects. Such policy of media and information literacy as a guiding principle brings, of course, its challenges. So for one, academic studies as well as my interviews have showed that a lot actually depends on teacher educators and their interest as well as investment in this topic. Other challenges have been revealed by the recent pandemic and distance learning, which exposed that there is a lack of technical equipment in schools, and there is a digital divide in even such a wealthy society as Germany. Also, an insufficient preparation or the support for teachers is also there. However, on a very plus side, very quickly after this realization, we saw a sharp rise in peer-to-peer exchange among teachers and educators, for example, on special Twitter accounts or various app groups, as well as numerous offered workshops. And since the end of last year, there has been a lot of discussion in Germany in various educational sectors about the changes that generative AI will bring to the notions and practices of teaching and learning. As good practices in media and information literacy education in Germany, I could mention that less than a decade happening institutional change within the universities, which created schools of education and centers for teacher education with the purpose to support future teachers, has been successful. Among one things that the Heidelberg School of Education, for example, is doing in this role is to offer additional qualifications for teacher students on the topics that are not necessarily touched in their study programs, but which are needed in their later professions, which in our case is critical media literacy. Another good example could be the suggested lesson plans, which facilitate media literacy competences and sometimes very unexpected subjects. So for example, in a 6th grade Latin language class, where pupils are asked to conduct internet research on old Romans, but they are given specific information literacy supporting steps of how to do it. Mentoring programs could also be mentioned, and they are happening either from older pupils in schools to younger ones, or even from parent to parent, as well as the booking of specific certified pedagogues from a statewide network of media centers who come to schools for a specific media-related topic, and it seems to be a well-functioning practice, at least in Baden-Württemberg. In Germany, media literacy is approached from a simultaneous effort angle, where 3 main groups are addressed with media literacy topics, and that is teachers, youth, children, and parents and grandparents. Also, German scholars researching teacher education also argue that more research in teacher education is only positive because it adds visibility and recognition to the topic on various institutional levels, and it supports cooperation on institutional as well as international levels. So let us turn out to Germany's neighboring country, Belgium. With over 11 million inhabitants, Belgium is a federal constitutional monarchy with a parliamentary system where decision-making powers are federal governments. There are 3 language-based communities, Flemish, French, and German-speaking, and 3 regions, Flanders, Brussels, and Wallonia. Language communities are responsible for education in Belgium. The Flemish-speaking community, which was my research interest for this report, forms more than a half of the Belgian population. In 2021, there were 22 universities and colleges with approximately 24,000 students in teacher training, and educational institutions in Flanders are highly competitive. School governing boards decide on their teaching methods, curricular, timetables, staff appointments, and the like. A 2019-20 reform has transferred teacher education training to universities and colleges in Flanders. In all, there are 6 types of teacher training programs that are aimed at a specific group of future teachers. Pre-service teacher education includes a practical part in schools as well, and teacher training programs develop their own curricular in relation to governmental guidelines. One other significant policy change was a 2012 accepted media literacy concept paper, defining a transversal approach to media literacy implementation in an interdisciplinary and cross-curricular manner. Thus, there is no compulsory MIL education in Belgium or MIL curriculum in Belgium, but it is in educational plans as a guideline for learning outcomes. Schools and school networks are addressing those guidelines locally because as education in general, MIL is a language community matter in Belgium. Such approaches mean that there is a multiplicity of ways that media literacy is practiced, which might be a challenge, but also a very powerful opportunity. What adds more complexity to the field is the financial uncertainty of teacher training organizations of Belgium and continuing professional development funding limits within schools. Some scholars in Belgium have argued that the policy challenges have increased the significance of media and education literacy on a societal level, but that a didactical level will still need to be addressed properly. Also in Belgium, COVID pandemic has caused the so-called digital jump, when technology was acquired for every school child from the age of 10. Belgium is really rich in good practice examples in the field of media literacy. As one could mention the growing curve practice, which divides the acquisition of skills and competences into phases spread across primary and secondary education. One other good practice is the localized approach towards schools' needs and co-created school policy between school principals, teachers, pupils, and parents. As in Germany, Belgium also practices their simultaneous efforts to raise MIL in society, addressing teachers, students, and parents with a group-tailored information. Media Coach program, for example, from Media Ways, fosters such good practice examples as informal peer-to-peer exchange through such events as Media Coffee, Media Pub, or Soups and Apps, which stem from the needs of the team and encourage expertise sharing with a fun factor where teachers exchange their knowledge. Class Summon database and EduBox would also be mentioned. This brings me to the last region that I will be covering today. And this is the eastern part of Belgium, the German-speaking community, with approximately 79,000 people. 10 secondary and 57 primary schools, And this community collaborates closely with the French-speaking community in Belgium, as well as German and Luxembourg countries. As in all of Belgium, education in the German-speaking community is subject to the principle of freedom of education. Teacher training happens in one higher education institution, which offers courses for educational sciences in kindergarten and primary school teacher studies. This University of Education is also responsible for the in-service teacher training of teachers who are obliged to participate in regular further professional development training. Each school can decide on 3 to 4 days of instruction dedicated to the collective continuing professional development of all staff. So the Ministry of Education provides guidelines for media literacy education in this part of Belgium and is a list of learning objectives for each stage of education as well as learning materials. As in the rest of Belgium, the emphasis rests on learning competences systematically and across all subjects from the first year to the completion of the secondary school. And the recent events of hate speech in German-speaking communities showed that media literacy education becomes more important when one tries to somehow mitigate the harm rather than prevent it. Thus, it is a rather reactive rather than proactive approach. This part of Belgium shows that good practices must involve the multiplicity of stakeholders, including teachers, media pedagogues, social workers, library workers, school principals, parents, and children, among others. Since 2020, Speak Up Association has been formed in this part of Belgium under the roof of the Institute of Democracy at the University of Education. And its aim is to connect people, organizations, and institutions which have MIL in their focus within this part. Their annual conference also serves as a multiplier event and suggests tried out tools and is labeled as well as teacher qualification event. I have covered now all of those three countries, and I will turn now to the conclusions. So the main aim of our work package was to map and analyze current practices, barriers, and opportunities in initial and in-service teacher training in media literacy. What our research has revealed is that globally there is a growing support in in-service teachers and their materials on media literacy, that MIL frameworks are diverse and vary from country to country and institution from institution, and that media literacy is approached as an interdisciplinary and cross-sectional competence to be acquired throughout the curricula of all subjects and throughout all phases of education. And that the pre-service programs are often tech-focused and often missing the critical perspective. And critical in our view is here, one should note as an understanding that critical thinking skills and inquisitive questioning are important. We also found that good practices involve a combination of governmental, institutional, and local approaches. And that the challenges are, to no one's surprise, the lack of financial resources usually, the lack of exchange between in-service and pre-service teacher education, underestimating the multiplicity of stakeholders, and the challenges that maybe the pandemic's digital jump and generative AI might bring to those processes. Important, we find, is the facilitation of transdisciplinary and cross-regional research cooperations and networks, as well as because we think that research adds higher and more sustainable quality to teacher education, and critical approaches are needed in a dynamic media landscape. Finally, a couple of self-reflective considerations. The challenges that appeared in our research were the following: usually not possibility to access most of the curriculum, maybe also accessing the or approaching concrete people on the ground, professors and teachers, confusion about the MIL concept, as was mentioned in the beginning of this presentation, language problem and accessing information limitations, as well as the Scopus program that was used for comparison is Western and English language based. And our work and this work package is also not full-time. So we ask for your kind response if something was not right. We thank you all for your attention, and we are looking forward to the discussion and groups with you.
Thank you very much, Lina, and of course, Lucia and Ricardo as well, for a great overview of the research work so far, which I hope everybody has found interesting. As you saw from Chloe in the chat, they will move on. They're moving on to a further set of countries for this current 6 months, and then the final set of countries for investigation from January through until June. However, we don't just want to share this information with you, we also want to have an opportunity to hear what's going on in your countries and in your regions with regard to teacher education. So we're going to go into breakout rooms in a moment. We're going to allocate 12 minutes to the breakout sessions. We are putting approximately 8 people into each of the breakout sessions, so stay with us for the breakouts if you don't mind. Between ourselves, between Lucia, Ricardo, Lina, and myself, we will be, and Lisa, we will be moderating the different sessions, and we will be asking for feedback. So if everybody's okay, thanks for everybody putting information into the chat as well too, that's really useful, and we will have time for an open discussion, I hope, at the end. So we're going to do the breakouts now. So Chloe is going to put us all into separate communities, separate breakout sessions, where we each have a separate question to guide our discussion with regard to teacher education and training in digital and media literacy. Yes, everybody was mid-sentence when when we all got moved. Okay. You know, with these kind of sessions, we just want to make sure we have an opportunity to have some dialogue with everybody who's joining us. So I hope, even though it will have been a short opportunity, I hope it was useful for you. And we're up against a bit of a time pressure now. So I'm going to do a quick round of our 5 groups, if I could. And because it's a group that I was in, I'm going to start with Jeroen, who's very kindly going to report back on the group, which was answering the question, who are the key stakeholders in in-service training? Jeroen, can you have a go at that for me?
Yes, I will try to wrap up what we said. Catherine from Estonia said that universities were mostly responsible to be leading the education on media literacy, also for in-service teachers. But because they're a small country, there are only like 5 to 10 persons who are working on teaching media literacy. So that's quite of a challenge. Mm-hmm. Then we had Zoe from the Netherlands, but she focused on Germany. One overarching organization or project, I'm not sure, is FOBIS, but I don't have anything else on FOBIS, so if you could put something in the chats, that would be nice. And also Media Scouts, who are working in one of the regions in Germany, working mostly on peer-to-peer work with students to take the pressure off teachers. But there is also the struggle that Lina said, because of the different states, that the states are responsible for their media literacy policy. And then we have Belgium, where Media Coach is responsible for in-service teachers. Teachers can enroll in the one, as I said in the breakout room, can enroll in a 1-year course to learn about various topics about media literacy. And that was most of it that I captured.
Thank you, Jeroen. Great capture. Ricardo, what about in your group? Who's reporting back? Your mic's off. Your mic's still off, Ricardo.
I will report, so maybe...
Sorry, I was saying that Tamara
Okay.
was there, luckily, and...
I was the lucky one.
Yeah.
So in our group, we had members, participants from Belgium, Germany, Croatia, and Ireland. And we discussed on topics to be addressed on media literacy education for teachers. And it was really interesting that we started with the information that it would be important to teach teachers how to deal with the fact that students are more advanced according digital literacy. So how to build teachers confident on media literacy education. And actually, this topic comes as a question on many conferences and teachers' discussions. So everyone agree on this. Yeah. Then we continue, and we came to the conclusion that about using media literacy and digital literacy as a form of education. And in Germany, for example, it is more focused on digital literacy and the skills that you get through the digital literacy. And then we come to the point that teachers start with media literacy or the projects according to what children search on the internet. So we had a person from Croatia who started on one European project working with teachers because children search for the information on influencers, and they find all kind of different disinformation, and that's why teachers start to learn on these topics, on influencers, disinformation, because children use this kind of media.
I'm going to stop you there, Tamara. I'm going to suggest that all our reporters give us a short summary that we'll put into the wrap-up afterwards as well, that actually elaborates a little bit further, because I know these are quite short reports. Lina, who is reporting back from your group?
It will be Suan.
Suan.
Yes, our group were from Indonesia, 2 from Greece and 1 from South Korea. And all the countries that we discussed had no national curriculum or guidelines from the country. So the question was, what good practice in media literacy education for pre-service teachers we could suggest. So Cecilia from Indonesia suggested bringing the awareness would be the first step, because it's not in the national curriculum. So that would be the first step. And Anastasia from Greece and Dora mentioned that building community, for example, they mentioned the club activity for after work. By building community, it would be the first step also. And also in South Korea, there's no national curriculum. So I suggested that the pre-service teachers could work with in-service teachers, because there is this system that they are connected one-on-one every year. So if they can build the community within in-service and pre-service teachers, it would be a good start.
Thanks, Suan. Thank you very much. Lucia, who was your reporter?
Actually, it was me.
Okay.
Nobody wanted to. And so I got a very interesting group, Croatia, Romania, and Portugal. So to synthesize, we got a lack of, just to remind you guys, my question was, what are the main challenges and opportunities for teacher training? So the response was basically, there is a lack of a comprehensive approach at national level, even to understand the concept of media information literacy. So there are some approaches offered by entities as UNESCO that is very helpful, but there is a lack of national guidelines supported by the government, supported by local entities. And one thing that was pointed out as a recommendation to solve some of these problems, especially in regards to training and education, is to form national hubs that can provide financial support to the development of initiatives, and also teaching models, tutorials, and this kind of things. So there is, so summarizing, it's the lack of approach, the lack of a systemic approach to media information literacy that is felt among those countries.
It's very common, isn't it? Right the way across, we see the same thing coming back. Chloe, last but not least, I think you're also reporting yourself.
Just a second. Yes. it's hard to do both at the same time. Yes, I'll be reporting because I forgot to ask beforehand, even though it was my own idea. So, but yeah, so our question was, who are the teachers in the need of training? So I think first we all agreed that at the moment in most of the countries, in the big majority, media literacy was a transversal goal, a transversal competencies. And I think in my group, so we had people coming from Switzerland, Brazil, Romania, Belgium, and France. Everyone agreed that it should stay like this. It should be a transversal competence that should all teachers should be trained. Now, it would be interesting. So first, I think someone brought it up to oh my God, to train everyone on this, if I understood well, initial training. Like this, it covers really every field, I would say. Yes, and then moving on to kind of specialize like this, it is not mandatory for all teachers and not too heavy, but they can then choose. But really at the first initial training, it should be covering every field. Now there was a question raised, it's that the reality is different because we know that it's some fields are more likely to teach media literacy, for example, language, ethics, civics, history, and so on. Should we focus on those ones or not? And then there was also someone pointing out that, for example, university professors were not targeting, and we should maybe target them. Kindergarten teachers, maybe also, yes. And all of that. But overall, I think we all agreed that media literacy was a long-term competencies that needed to be built up over years. And yeah, just
Thanks.
Not one, of course.
Just one, of course. Thank you. Thank you very much, Chloe. And thank you all for our reporters back. So we want to fit one more presentation in before the end, and we are delighted to welcome Lise de Boeck from Thomas More College here in Belgium, because we wanted to make sure we had a good input about pre-service. So Lise, over to you to introduce the work you're doing in pre-service teacher education. I see your slides fine.
But my sound wasn't. So I think you can hear me now.
You're fine.
Okay. So I'm going to tell you something more about the implementation of media and information literacy in our curriculum of the primary teacher education program in Belgium, more precisely in Mechelen, Belgium. We have a normal and a short version of our teacher education program, which is 3 years or 2 years, according if you already have a bachelor degree or not. And when you have our degree, you can teach every topic to children from 6 to 12 years in primary schools. I did the media coach training Jeroen told us about a few years ago, and I did a mapping of our program to see in which courses media literacy was already present. I also developed a new course about media literacy for our students, and I tried to integrate media literacy in other courses, so the transversal approach Chloe talked about earlier. The mapping was not that difficult because a lot of colleagues already did a few things about media literacy, but sometimes it was deliberately and sometimes it was by accident because they didn't recognize it or called it like that. The integration of media literacy in the other courses was more difficult because colleagues told me they lack experience or confidence, or they wanted just to focus on their own main subject in their own course. So the new course, which focused on media literacy as one topic, was an optional course for our third-year students, which lasted the whole year, and you got 9 credits of 180 credits in total. So I'm going to focus on that now and tell you something more about the content of this expert class about media literacy. So first, they have an input on their own level and a translation on how to use or to do it in their own future classroom. So we talk about teaching methods, materials that are developed by external partners, good practices you can use you can do in your own classroom. And here you can see a few examples of topics we address, from sexting to advertising, games, digital balance, etc. On their own level, we also did kind of a book club. So they read a book about media literacy topic. They made a vlog about it. And we also discussed afterwards the findings and things they learned while reading the book they chose. A second part is that they did a project with an external partner outside of the school context, which was quite an eye-opener for a lot of students, because what else could they do with their degree and expertise? So it was very interesting to create new didactic materials and filling gaps in the domain. When they did it, they had to present their results by using an advertisement. So also media literacy related. Here you can see a few examples that our students did. They made an escape room, they made games, exercises, a website about the library in the neighborhood, so a lot of different things. The third part in this expert class was an internship in primary schools. So they were teaching lessons to children from 6 to 12 years old about a lot of different topics. You can see a few about cybersecurity, about how to use emojis when chatting with someone, how to add audio effects on videos, and also about food advertising and so on. So a few of the results here in the classroom. You can see they made posters about passwords. They talked about abbreviations in language. They talked about emojis and so on. The last part about the internship was also on a meso level. So they also helped the school with a media literacy related question. For example, how can we lower the barrier for teachers to use different online tools in the classroom? Or how can we as a school inform parents about the media literacy of their child so they can be involved in their digital world? So a lot of different questions, and the students together with the teachers and the head of the school tried to find an answer on this kind of question. So the result could be a discussion with the teachers, or a website, as you can see here, or posters that they spread around the schoolyard to inform the parents. Now we have a new curriculum that will be enrolled starting February, and there are a few changes made. So for instance, it's not optional anymore. So every student will have a media literacy course in their curriculum. A few changes: it is media literacy combined with STEM, also only 1 semester and 3 credits. And the input part of the expert class remains. The touching fields, STEM and media literacy, I will do in co-teaching with my colleague of STEM. So it will be very interesting, I think. And also in our short program, there will be free service teachers as well as in-service teachers together in one classroom. So I'm looking forward to the discussions that will bring. Another small adjustment, but an important one, I think, is that when our third-year students do their long internship in their school, they also have a focus, and they can choose media literacy as a focus. So it's very hands-on how to integrate the topics in the classroom, in the school, and together with their mentor, the teacher at the school, they can co-teach, they do lessons about the topics in their classroom. So it's not already started, so I'm looking forward to this, and it will be continued. Thank you for listening.
Lise, thank you so much. Thank you very much for the input. This is, as you know, the first of 3 of these sessions running between now and Christmas, so I hope you'll all be back to join us for the next 2 as well. But before we come to an end, I want to check if there's any questions, first of all, for Lise. Anybody got any questions they'd like to put to her about the course? Lisa, is it too early to know what the enrollment is going to be in terms of the?
How many students?
Yeah.
We have 30 student. No, it's second year student now. We have 60 primary teacher, pre-service primary teachers in our course. Yes.
Okay. So
we're not at big university college, so it's quite a big group for us. Yes.
Okay. And you'd be willing to share? Sorry, shoot. Yeah.
Yeah, just a quick question. What was the main thing you had to take out of the course?
I'm sorry,
what was the main thing you had to take out of the course? Would you say?
The internship is not anymore in the course. So it was from 9 credits to 3 credits. So we focused on the inputs and how to translate the inputs to the level of the primary school, but the actual internship will not be in the course anymore. So it will be in the long internship everyone has in their third year.
Thank you.
Thanks, Arlene. Anybody else? Any questions for Lise? Just switch on your mic. Okay, we mentioned, of course, along with the other presentations and the summaries of discussions, we will share these afterwards with everybody. So thank you all very much for joining. It was a bit of a rush today. We'll try and make sure we have more time for the next get together that we have in a month's time, when we'll also be bringing together the similar group. We'll be talking about our second work package. So Chloe, maybe we can remind people about dates. If you could just share the slides for me, that'd be great. So we can tell people what the dates are if they're not already registered. Thank you. It's getting there. There we are. So the next one on teacher education, the TeaMLit, will be the one on the networking that we mentioned, work package 2. So we really hope you'll be able to join us. Again, we'll take time out to do some breakouts. We'll give a bit more time to it the next time round and report back. And then our final of the TeaMLit sessions then is taking place on the 13th of December, when it will be led by our colleagues from MediaWays, from Bert and Jeroen, and they will be talking about the resources that are being created and the modules that are being created as part of the project. We also want to let you know that on the 15th of December, we'll have a session specifically on standards and best practices in media literacy in Europe. It's a half-day event. You can register for it the same way as you registered for today's event. And also, just to let you know, to save the date, there is a conference taking place, Media Literacy Matters, as part of the European Digital Media Literacy Conference Week and as part of the Belgian presidency of the European Union. So you can sign up for that. And I think on our next and final slide is probably some of our links. So, but you'll find everything there. We also have special interest groups as part of the Media Learning Association for our members, one of which on digital media literacy, another on OEM War. And you can see the list that's also given on the screen at the moment. Again, more information you'll find on our site. So the only thing I have left to do, I think, this afternoon is to thank you very much for joining us today, and also to thank my colleague Chloe for running the session for us this afternoon. And we look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks' time for the next TeaMLit session. Thank you all. Bye-bye, and see you again soon.